I wonder if you would mind telling the story. Some people will remember this, but most don't. You were on the baseball field
Right.
with Steve Scalise and Rand Paul was there. I forget who all was there, but there was a gunman that started shooting at members of Congress in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And you have field experience from both military and as a doctor. If you don't mind, tell that story quickly, because Steve Scalise says openly you saved his life.
Well, God put me in the right place at the right time on that day, because I had just batted and I was on my way to the outfield, and it was a couple of days later where I got a chill thinking why I changed my mind and went down to the batting cage. And I was down at the batting cage, and that put me in the safest place I could be, because batting cage is outside the fence of the field, where if you're in the bullpen or something like that, you're still inside the field. One blessing is it was the last day of practice, so pitchers weren't there and nobody was in the bullpen, because that was third base side. This guy started shooting from the third base side, just missed Trent Kelly at third base, hit Steve Scalise. Steve has a detail, so Steve saved our lives too, because without him there's no detail. Now there's return fire. Most people don't know there were 136 rounds fired through this process. But I was in a position where I got down on the ground, and it was totally military instinct. I mean, I wasn't. To my surprise later, I was never really nervous, and it was just like, this is what you do. So I get down, I could see the shooter, I could see the police, I could see everybody on the field hiding behind trees, diving into dugouts, doing whatever he can. The shooter comes around. I had to move one time because he got in my lane, and I got behind a bathroom there. But he had been firing a rifle, and then he came out from behind a building. Now he's got a 9mm, and that's when Alexandria police showed up. David Bailey was the only Capitol Police still standing, because Crystal Griner, she got hit in the ankle, and she was down. And so between Alexandria Police and David Bailey, they closed in on the guy, and once they hit him once, I took off running. And got out to Steve. Some of the people that were in the dugout got to him first, and somebody took their shirt off and put it over the wound. But the process you do, you just sweep the body. Are you shot anywhere else besides this obvious? And then, I did what you do. I pulled his pants down, and there was no exit wound. So I knew he was much worse off, because that meant it went up. And that means he's bleeding internally. And truthfully, my mind went to a soldier we didn't save in Iraq, because it was a blunt injury. And it wasn't until he started really dropping that we knew we had to open him up, and there was blood everywhere. It was too late. He ruptured an artery in there, a major artery. So he was shot up internally, so I know he's bleeding inside. But I put the tourniquet on, so at least that major artery to the leg is not going to keep bleeding out. And so we're reducing bleeding, but I was monitoring him too. Like, he was still talking. He couldn't move his left leg, but I checking his pulse. It's still pretty strong. You think about protecting the core. It's your heart, lungs, and brain that need the blood. And so one thought is, if it's really dropping off, you can exsanguinate blood out of an arm and then put a tourniquet there and keep the blood in the central core. But if you do it too soon, you might be increasing the blood pressure, and you get more internal bleeding. So that was the process going on. But when the medics came, I said, how fast can you start an IV? Because he's going to need fluid. And they said, we don't have it. Well, they had it, but it was on their ambulance, which they couldn't drive out there. So the guy knew what I meant, that he needs fluid. I said, Steve, you got to drink. We got to get fluid into your body. So when he got him out, he got it there. And then another miracle is Park Police landed on the field. They can fly anywhere in the D.C. area without restriction. And so instead of the ambulance, he went on that. The ambulance, he wouldn't have made it with traffic. He wouldn't have made it. And this guy, he flew in the war, and I met him once. He said, I flew that bird like I stole it. And when Steve got to the hospital, he had no blood pressure. I mean, they immediately started pumping him with blood and open him up and get things under control. So God was with us that day, for sure. But I'll make one other comment, too, that, if you think about this, without Steve Scalise being there, this guy could have come in and taken out 20 to 30 members of Congress and their staff in one morning, changing the balance of power in the House of Representatives. That's an insurrection.
Yeah.
That's what an insurrection really looks like. And I tried to get that component into the January 6th Commission. I said, if you're truly interested in protecting this beautiful Capitol and the people who work here, we need to review what happened that day so that we know we're prepared. Because I thought that was the premise of the commission, right? What happened? How could we have done better? Well, that turns out that's not what it was. But I went through that whole scenario just like I did with you. And we weren't in the majority at that point, and the chairman said, "You all had your chance."
Yeah.
Cold.